there. Now, my second guest, and Mark has been on the show before, Mark Delvin. Mark is a UK-based club and radio DJ and music journalist, specialising in black dance music in its many forms. In recent years, Mark has begun speaking about the dark forces that have been manipulating the music industry for decades. This led to the publication of his book Musical Truth in 2016, with Volume 2 following in early 2018. His debut novel, The Cause and the Cure, arrived early 2020. Good evening, Mark. How are you doing?
Hey, Alan, I have to laugh whenever anyone reads out my biog and describes me as a DJ, because there are no DJs in 2020, because there's nowhere you can go to DJ. So that's what I used to do in the past, and I'm doing some very different stuff now, as you know. I think it's about a year, actually, since the Open Minds conference in Waterford. I can't remember if you were there at the last one, but it was round about...
I was, yeah. Yeah, because you wanted to, remember you wanted to get the desk set up, and I was trying to work with Trevor to get that sorted for you.
That's right. Yeah, the DJ set. Yeah. So that was about a year ago this month, and there we all were talking about, incoming tyranny and the true nature of the New World Order agenda, and forewarning people of what could be coming. And here we are, a year later. Enough said, I think.
Exactly, and If we go back to that time, Mark, and we said, and we had a bit of hindsight, would we have believed that would be in the situation now in Ireland? Because, the one thing that annoys the hell out of me, well, not annoys the hell out of me, but I'm a bit kind of annoyed about, why are the Irish people, and even the people in the UK, the English people, why are we so acquiescent to the government and we just do what we're told?
I know, man. I never would have believed that they would have brought all this in so quickly, all at once. I mean, I've been writing about it for years and researching it, and I've put it in my books and in my talks, but even though I knew what the game plan was, I don't think any truth researcher could have imagined that it would all get dumped on us the way it has this year. So it's taken even us researchers by surprise. And in terms of the reaction, I don't think it's any different in Ireland to what it is in the UK and most countries in Europe and most of the world, from what I've seen of the footage that's going on and all the horror stories coming from these different countries. It just seems prior to this agenda being brought in, there was a long period of softening up the populations and emasculating men, because the worst nightmare of the control system in the midst of what they've tried to bring in this year would be militias of strong, physically strong and mentally strong and committed men rising up in their mass numbers, standing shoulder to shoulder with each other and committing themselves to putting this tyranny down and going out there and doing whatever needed to be done. Of course, we've not seen that. We've not seen anything close to that. And I think that speaks to the social engineering that's been done over the past several years, coming out of agencies like the Tavistock Institute and these agencies that specialise in psychological manipulation and predicting human behaviours and how to manage the human psyche and all of this. I think they've been working on us for a number of years through popular culture, subliminal messaging that comes through advertising, through messages we've been getting in the media, and just changing and shaping and moulding society and attitudes and the way people think about things. So a lot of that would have been happening on a very scientific basis in the years leading up to 2020, and the results speak for themselves, where most people are, as you say, just meekly acquiescing. They really do believe that if we all just do as our governments tell us, one day this beastly virus will go away and we can all get back to our lives as normal. They have no conception of what the real game plan is here and all the ulterior motives that this so-called virus is really shielding. And it's a very tragic thing. It's very difficult for the likes of us that have done the research and do know what this is really all about to see everyone else in society just going along with their own enslavement, because in the process they're also enslaving us and they're ensuring our rights and freedoms get taken away, and we do not consent to that. So tragically, we are all in this together, and so it becomes our duty to continue trying to get through to the masses and trying to wake up as many people as possible to what's going on. It's a real burden to have to do that day in, day out, especially when you've already been doing it for several years. But we have no choice in this instance, because if the masses go down the way the controllers want them to go down, they're going to drag us with them.
Yeah, definitely. And with everything going on, I just, we knew about this years ago, because when I did, when I was running the OAM with Steve, we said years and years ago that this is going to happen. We thought they had to bring out martial law. We thought they will have to bring out martial law because the Irish people be up in arms and they won't accept it. And all of a sudden, the government turn out and go, oh yeah, we want to lock everything down. Everybody just go into the house and that's it. And it's just unbelievable. And as you say, these people no government, I don't think in history has ever beat a virus. How can a government beat a virus? Logically, how can a government do it? And our government thinks, you're on a 4-week lockdown over in the UK. Yeah. We're on a 6-week lockdown. Well, we're locked down for 6 weeks. This is obviously at the end of the month, like the lockdown is supposed to ease, and people are saying the rumor is they're going to give us Christmas, and then when January comes, it's going to be another lockdown because not the deaths, but the cases have gone up. And obviously, influenza has just disappeared off the planet, or in Ireland anyway, in the UK. It's just disappeared. Nobody's dying of anything else apart from the COVID. Oh, no. Oh, hang on. Let me correct that. They're not dying. It's the cases that they're finding. So if you have a case, and then you have to stick this cotton wool bud thing up your nose. Why they have to hit the blood-brain barrier to actually test you? Why can't you just swab your mouth? I mean, if you had the flu and you coughed and that went on somebody, chances are they might get it. So why do you need to stick something up your nose? It just doesn't make sense. Well, it makes sense to them, but doesn't make sense to the ordinary person in the street because they're not asking that question.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to anyone with the capacity for critical thought and, more than a couple of brain cells and eyes to see. What we have is a case-demic now. So it's all about cases because they just couldn't make the story that there's this virus which is infecting people and killing people stick because it just wasn't happening. So they had to come up with a new way of justifying all the lockdowns and all the draconian measures. So now they're talking about cases. And as we know, we're being told that you can be a case of coronavirus without having any symptoms. That's convenient, isn't it? So you can feel perfectly well, you don't exhibit that there's anything wrong with you, but you can still be a case. So you get chalked up as one of the figures, you get added to the numbers, and of course the numbers go through the roof when they're done on that basis. There's also false positive tests. There's so much evidence that this is going on. And half the problem is that people keep queuing up to get tested, of course. If people didn't bloody line up to get tested, then the test figures wouldn't go through the roof, would they? The case figures. I know some people are being forced to as a condition of their work or whatever, but many other people are just queuing up because they're scaredy cats and they believe everything they've heard in the media about some deadly virus. But honestly, Alan, I don't think they're going to be able to keep this going for too much longer, especially if, as you say, they give us Christmas and then they try to lock us all down again by January. I think that the longer they drag this thing out and the more of these stunts they pull, the more it's going to backfire on them, because we're seeing some resistance now. Lord knows it's taken long enough. I would have liked to have seen this happening back in the spring, back in May or June. But here we are in November, and finally we're starting to see some resistance. So there's been loads of protest events all over the UK this weekend because we've just gone into this new lockdown. So all over the country I've heard of protest events springing up in towns and cities. Over the past several weeks there have been big ones in London, Liverpool, Manchester, Birmingham, all the big cities. And people are taking it to the streets and letting it be known, sending a clear and direct message that they're not falling for the scam anymore and we're not going to cooperate with this draconian totalitarianism. So that's a promising thing. We've got a common law case which is being launched against the treasonous UK government. I've covered that on a couple of the podcasts I've done recently with Michael O'Byrne-Sia, who's the guy that's bringing the case. He's assembled a legal team. He's got barristers that have been queuing up to be a part of the case that he's bringing. And he says that they're very much on board. They've wanted to see something like this being launched against the UK government, but they've not been able to bring it themselves. So they were waiting for somebody else to bring it so that they could jump on board. So notice of liability has been served to all British MPs for fraud, treason and genocide, which are three of the most serious things you can ever be accused of. And papers have been served and they've been given the deadline of tomorrow. And with poetic beauty, tomorrow is the 9th of November, which is 9/11. So that is the deadline by which MPs have been asked to respond to what they've been served and these accusations that have been levelled against them, and they've been invited to present evidence that COVID-19 actually exists, because the contention of the legal case is that through freedom of information documentation that's been requested and received, the government, by their own admission, has said that they've got no proof that this supposed virus has ever been isolated and can therefore be shown to exist. So I'm holding out lots of hope for that. It looks very promising. There's a couple of other cases going on in the UK as well. There's Simon Dolan's Keep Britain Free case, which he's putting through the conventional courts, maritime law as opposed to common law. That doesn't really seem to be going anywhere. And there's also one called the Coronavirus Act 2020 is null and void. So I'm trying to remain optimistic about how things are going to turn out from this point on, because, as I say, the longer it gets dragged out, the more the perpetrators are exposing this scam, because the official story just isn't stacking up anymore. People are starting to ask questions. They are starting to get very peed off with what their lives have become, and I think that's only going to continue.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm seeing people just ignoring wherever this level, we're on level 5, wherever they want to call it, and people are just ignoring it. They're just getting on with things. Now, You're still going to have your mask wearers, but over in Ireland, we had, and by the way, did them 6 politicians, the MPs, resign? Is that true?
Some have resigned. I think that may be as a result of this action that's being brought against them. We had a vote on Wednesday in Parliament. Well, not we. Politicians voted. The public never gets a say. And they were voting on whether to approve this extended lockdown of a month, which, by the way, was announced by Boris Johnson after dark last Saturday. So that would be the 31st of October. That would be Halloween. Why would he wait until after dark to announce it? Because it's all part of a cult ritual.
That's right.
That's what's going on here. They're doing it by the dates. So then the lockdown came in on Thursday, which is the 5th of November, which is a very ominous date in British history, all connected with treason.
And Guy Fawkes,
the overthrow of tyrannical regimes. So that's the day. It's almost like mockery. It's like satanic mockery. So they deliberately chose that date to rub our noses in it, and they've been doing that all year. They've been picking dates of solstices, equinoxes, the anniversary of the Magna Carta being signed, the English Constitution. You know, on that very day, mask wearing became mandatory on public transport. It's not by accident that things happen on these dates. We had another bout of the masks being brought in on the 4th of July. And we had 2 further orders about mask wearing coming in on the 24th of July, which is 24/7, as in all the time, never ending, and on the 8th of August, which is the 8th of the 8th, and 8 is a number of infinity. So they're doing it all by the numbers. It's all ritual, and they're exposing their true nature as dark occultists in all this.
Yeah, the thing is, I don't think people realise that how satanic these people are and how ritualistic they are. I mean, literally, the listeners really need to understand that these people are so brainwashed regarding their rituals. I mean, if they're told that they have to run around a tree and pray to the god of goats, they'll do it because they're told that they'll get superpowers if they do it. I mean, this is how screwed up they are. Over here in Ireland, Mark, we have our national broadcaster, RTE, and you know about the Barrington Declaration Group, and this is a group of experts, like Professor Dolores Cahill and a lot of experts in their field. Now, RTE had a choice, I suppose, and they could say, well, okay, we could interview people from the Barrington Declaration who are experts in the field but are going against the government narrative, or we could get 2 wannabe pop idols, Jedward, who don't know their arse from the elbow, but they're pushing the government narrative. Guess which one they picked? Yes, Jedward. They got Jedward in, who don't need to know their arse from the elbow, who know nothing about viruses or epidemiology or anything like that, but they get them in because they are pushing the actual government narrative. And the likes of Professor Dolores Cahill and the Barrington Declaration Group don't even get a look in. And people say that our national broadcaster like the BBC is impartial. I mean, how ridiculous is that?
Absolutely. I mean, when you want incisive, meaningful, highbrow commentary on political matters, who else would you call but Jedward? I mean, it goes without saying. I saw them savaging some of these musicians. So a few weeks ago, Van Morrison brought out some songs which were anti-government lockdown measures. So fair play to him. I've got renewed respect for Sir Van Morrison, even though he's a sir. He's evidently broken ranks, and he's someone that can think for himself and is happy to put his own thoughts out there in the form of songs. And also we had Ian Brown of the Stone Roses. He's been putting out truthful music for years. And Right Said Fred have come forward as well, incredibly, and they've been supporting anti-lockdown measures. And Jedward popped up trolling on Van Morrison and Ian Brown's Twitter accounts. And they're just ripping into them and saying, you're COVID-idiots, anti-maskers, conspiracy theorists, and just poking fun at them and taking the rise out of them. This is coming from Jedward. Seriously?
Yeah. Jedward, who's going to take these idiots seriously, honestly? So what do you think of the story regarding Liverpool and the whole idea that the army's going up there? That's been reported that it's happening, that it seems to be Liverpool is going to be the test area for getting everybody tested for this virus. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, I have, and I've seen a letter that was sent from the headmaster of one of the schools up there to the parents of the children saying that this testing is going on, and normally we would ask for parental consent, but there's no time because it's too urgent, so we're just going to do it anyway. I think she did say if you really do have any objections, make sure you've written to me by Monday morning, so there's a slight get-out clause there, but it's a very dangerous precedent that's been set, and they're using Liverpool as a testing ground, clearly, to see how readily people accept this, and maybe they were expecting more of a reaction than they got from the people of Liverpool. Maybe they were expecting them to rise up a bit more than they seem to have done, but they seem to identify these different regions as testing grounds for things that they want to roll out everywhere else. They've been doing it with Australia for years, so when it comes to the New World Order, Agenda 2030, United Nations Master Plan, there's certain aspects of it that they've introduced in Australia just to test the waters, and they quite often do the same thing in Scotland. So something they want to roll out for the whole of the UK, they'll do a little test exercise in Scotland to see how people react to it. So that must be what's going on in Liverpool. Obviously, it's very dangerous and alarming information coming out of there. But one thing I have noticed this year is there's been a lot of threats made of things that are planned to be brought in, all the way up to these internment camps. Forced quarantine centres for people that evidently have the disease and have to be taken off to these places. But despite the fact that this has appeared in documentation and certain people have been making noise about it, a lot of it hasn't come to pass yet. And I've got to wonder whether certain aspects of it amount to psychological torture. It's more manipulation that comes out of the likes of the Behavioural Insights team in London that specialise in studying the human psyche and how it's going to respond to certain situations. So I think a lot of what's been done to us this year is psychological torture by design. They've worked out how they can make our lives as fearful, joyless and miserable as they can. And there's also been what I've referred to as the war on joy. So they've taken away anything that we used to do that was pleasurable, anything we used to choose to spend our time doing that we enjoyed. You can't do that anymore. You can't go to the pub. You can't go and have a sing. You can't go and have a dance. You can't go to the nightclub. You can't go and get your hair done in the salon. You can't go and play a game of bingo. You can't go and watch a football game. You can't go and watch a film. You can't go and see a stage show in a theatre. All these things have been taken from our lives. And when you look at it and you really think about it, these are all tenets of communism, which is actually what we've got here. So our lives have been reduced during these lockdowns to consisting of nothing more than going to the shop for essential supplies, and in many cases you might have to queue outside the shop, and going out for your measly little bout of exercise each day, and that's it. You can't go and see your family, according to the official rules, if anyone's actually following these rules anymore. I don't think they are. I was out today, and the roads were absolutely jammed. It was just like any other Sunday. I went in a couple of shops. They were packed out. So I don't think people are observing it anymore. But they're trying to take away everything from us, all these aspects of enjoyment, and just leave us with the bare bones minimum. And this is communism.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you know what reminded me of that situation that you've just explained about they're stopping us from doing X, Y, and Z. In history, we had the Puritans, and the Puritans, everything was sinful. So if you go to the cinema, that's sinful. If you drink, that's sinful. So everything was sinful in their eyes, and they obviously ran their course in history for a period of time. And if you look up the Puritans in history, everything was sinful. You couldn't do anything because everything was sinful. Dancing, smiling, laughing, drinking, whatever was sinful. Yeah. So the same thing applies, and I totally agree. Maybe there's more of, because they are not getting what they want, or people are just now begin to say, well, I'm just going to ignore that. And you're right, a lot of people are getting on. I mean, I'm seeing it myself. There's people getting on and having friends and family over and going off and doing things, completely ignoring the whole idea with the mask. I mean, I'm sorry to say, but if you're dumb enough to think that a mask, a piece of cloth on your face, is going to protect you from a virus, then I have a bridge to sell you, really, because it's that ridiculous. If you speak to any epidemiologist or a person who's a biologist who'll know about viruses, I mean, number one, he'll say, well, it'll get up your nose, in your mouth, and in your eyes. So if it gets in your eyes, then what's the mask going to do? And if you look at a level 4 virus laboratory, and they're all wearing hazmat suits because of the viruses, and you think a flimsy piece of material on your face is going to stop. No, it's all about control. That's really what it is.
Yeah, and we're being told that the case figures are going through the roof again now, and they're out of control. So I guess all these weeks of people wearing masks then out in public haven't worked, because if it was effective, then you'd see the case figures going down, wouldn't you?
Good point.
So that means, the social distancing hasn't worked, the masks haven't worked. And isn't it funny how in Sweden they've adopted none of these measures? I mean, I hear from people that I know in Sweden that some bars and restaurants or whatever are putting up screens and placing the tables further apart and things like that. But that's their own choice. It's not been a government mandate. And masks are not required to be worn. I've got friends in Sweden that say if you're walking around with a mask, you're seen as a weirdo still. Just like if you'd walked around with a mask in the UK or Ireland last year, if you'd gone in a pub with a mask on this time last year, what do you think the landlord would have said to you? What's with the mask, buddy? Can you lose the mask? You're distressing people in here. And yet now, in England and everywhere else, you're the weirdo if you don't wear a mask. But in Sweden, it's the other way around. And they seem to have coped with it. People have not been going down with this virus in vast numbers. So what are they getting right that we're doing so wrong? And why are we not all following the Swedish model in that case? Well, because it's all lies and it's all manipulation and it's all to do with ulterior motives, as we well know. I have my doubts that there's even a virus in the first place, and there's division and disagreement on the true nature of a virus anyway, even among medical professionals. It seems that even if there is some kind of disease here, at the very least it's been mislabelled as a virus. But I had this idea, and I have for several weeks, that this whole COVID narrative was cooked up in very large part in connection with the American elections, which have just taken place.
Yeah.
And it's been my suspicion that this one, it was known to be coming for many years, because through work that I've done, I've shown references in movies and TV shows from years back which address aspects of this particular narrative, and many of them pinpoint it as happening in 2020. So it was obviously always in their plans to drop this one in 2020. But I think a very large part of the intent behind it was to try and derail Trump's chances of getting re-elected in this last election, because the control system, the architects of this narrative, hate Trump. And we can see this through the way he's been treated in the mainstream media. They've done nothing but lampoon him and ridicule him and criticise him ever since he came on the scene. And that's got to tell you something. Just the fact that they all take the same stance against him tells you that they're all controlled by the same forces, in the same way that all the governments of the world putting their countries into lockdown at the same time shows you that they're not making these individual decisions for themselves. They're receiving the order from on high. So the fact that Donald Trump has been so universally despised by the mainstream press tells you a little something about how the controllers of the mainstream press the controllers of organised society feel about him. And it seems to me that this virus, because every year that there's a major US election, I don't know if you've noticed, but some kind of pandemic just happens to come along, whether it's SARS or bird flu or whatever. There's a long-running history of this. So this was the big one that was dropped in 2020, and I think the idea was to use it to get Trump's chances of being re-elected finished. So it would be causing many people that would be too scared to go out to stay at home and to do votes by post. And it would be to try and frame Trump as a bad leader that didn't take the crisis seriously and didn't lead the country effectively, all these things. So here we are a few days after the election, and it appears as if they've got what they wanted in terms of Joe Biden being named as the next... I can't take that statement seriously. Joe Biden as president. Come on.
Yeah.
He can barely...
the kiddie fiddler.
Exactly, the hair sniffer, yeah. Can barely string a sentence together. And the guy's 78. He's going to be 82 at the end of his term. Yeah. Well, he's not going to have a term because clearly this is another example of the treacherous mainstream media giving away their true nature because they've called it early before the matter has even been finished. And from Donald Trump's camp, we're hearing allegations of electoral fraud on the part of the Democrats. And he's claiming that they've stolen this election. And he and his legal team have got all the proof that votes were counted by deceased people, that votes were duplicated, and that many ballot papers are just straight fabrications and fakes because they appear to have pulled this masterstroke of applying invisible watermarks to the ballot papers in certain states. And the watermark can only be seen under UV light in very special conditions. And so any ballot that is not genuine would not have that watermark on it. And they're testing many of these ballot papers, and they're able to prove that many of them have been fraudulently fabricated. So what I think we're going to see over the next few days, even though liberal lefties are celebrating and dancing in the streets. Oh, no, you're not allowed to dance, are you? Because COVID will get you. But they're celebrating Biden's apparent win, and the press are saying, oh, Joe Biden's going to be the 46th president of the United States. Wait and see. Wait and see what happens, because I think Trump and his legal team are going to provide indisputable evidence of fraud, and Biden is going to be in some deep water, and Trump will get his second term after all. And so that would mean that the whole COVID debacle that was intended in very large part to bring about this result will have failed. And I think it was just decided to plunge the rest of the world into communism and tyranny at the same time. This was a plan that was primarily aimed at America, but the controllers probably getting desperate because they want to put the final jigsaw pieces of their puzzle together very quickly. So they thought, let's just plunge the whole of the rest of the world in it and call the rest of the world's governments to impose this draconianism. And I think that's what we've been witnessing.
I agree with you. I mean, if you think about it, I'm not saying Trump is a saint, because I know in the background he's not. He has his own agenda, and I know that for a fact for the people that I speak to. However, he did bring out 126 executive orders benefiting the people, and the economy was on the up. And they didn't like it because they thought, well, if he is carrying on doing what he's doing before the elections, there's not a chance in hell that we will get somebody in. So we have to affect the economy, and we have to blame it on him. They bring in the COVID, and it affects everything and the whole lot. And then he comes out with the cure as well, and he talks about the cure, and he said, well, if you can have vaccines, but they're not going to be mandatory. And of course, and they start putting their people in. If it is true about the watermark on the ballots, the vote-in ballots or the mail-in ballots, then they really shot themselves in the foot, as far as I'm concerned, because that's going to be so obvious. Now, he did elect a lady in to the Supreme Court,
yes.
And she was in there, and that's a full-time job. She gets full tenure in there. She can't be sacked. So she's in there, and she's going to be on his side. So
Amy Coney Barrett, yeah.
Yeah, we'll just have to see what plays out, I think. with that and what happens with Trump, because, if he does get another 4 years, it has to be better. Now, as I say, I know for a fact that Trump has his own agenda and there's things going on in the background that people are not aware of with Trump. So I'm not going to turn around and say that, Trump's going to be the savior, because back in 2014, if you remember, Putin was the savior and it was all, Putin, we can't do anything wrong. He's going to save the world. And now we have 6 years later, we have Trump. And he's the savior program, and Trump's going to save the world. All right, so we have to be aware of that. At the end of the day, we have the power as the people to make the change. We don't have to rely on a savior program. We don't have to rely on the government. We can all do it. We have the ability and the power to do it. We can save ourselves. We just have to take the energy to do it.
Well, that's right. But it would certainly help us to help ourselves if this COVID nonsense all went away. And Trump knows that this is all BS. He knows this thing has been cooked up for him. He's more or less said so in various comments he's made through the year. And when he came out on the 2nd of October claiming that he'd tested positive for the virus, he was playing the architects of this at their own game. He was just, playing chess games with them. He was mocking them because he knows there's no virus out there that he stands any chance of catching. So he was, and then he was out of the medical centre within 2 or 3 days, saying he felt great, telling people it's nothing to be afraid of, don't let it ruin your lives. That was his kind of message to more or less imply that this whole thing is fake. And he's made various comments through the years along the lines of, one day this virus will go away very quickly, like a miracle. You watch. And I think his plan was, as soon as he got back into office, and maybe he knew this stunt was going to be pulled, maybe he knew they were going to try and steal the election, and he set this trap for them, for the Democrats, and they walked straight into it. And as you say, he appointed Amy Coney Barrett as the Supreme Court Justice of the United States just a few weeks ago, almost as if in readiness for this event, as if he knew it was coming and he wanted her to be installed. And so he would claim that either they're rolling out something like hydroxychloroquine or one of these other wonder drugs as an alternative to vaccines, and this has caused the case numbers to plummet, or he'll just simply say that it's on the wane and it's receding and it's going away. And if that happens in America, it's going to have to happen everywhere else. Otherwise people will be asking, well, how come this deadly virus is being told? So I think his plan always was to roll this whole thing back. And then you've got to hope that all these claims we've heard about him poised to arrest major evildoers like Hillary Clinton and Bill Gates and Barack Obama and Joe Biden himself and Hunter Biden are correct, because, in his second term, he would have...
We have to not make assumptions, because I know there's more stuff that's going on in the background with this. And the fact that they, he said, he had the press reported that he got COVID. My intel has told me that he actually went to Greenland, to an underground base, to have a meeting. So that's where he went to. So the COVID thing, that he had COVID, was just an excuse.
What's the meeting supposed to have been about?
I can't say on air. I'll talk to you privately about it. Okay. But basically, he wanted something, he didn't get it, and I'll chat to you. You have to be careful, but I think you're right. I think I had an idea. I was kind of thinking about this, and I was going, I think whoever gets in, like the fact that Biden's in, and all of a sudden I think the virus will disappear because they got what they want. But now, if Trump is actually going to argue the point, and now isn't there something got to do with, if he keeps arguing the point and he gets up to January, then the head of the Senate gets in as an acting president or something like that, which is Pelosi.
Oh, well, I'm not sure how that works. Even if Biden does take the presidency, Trump is still in charge until the 20th of January. So he's still got the opportunity. He's got 2 months' opportunity to clean up. So if that's something he was intending to do in his second term, to arrest all these people and, expose all this criminal behaviour, then he's still got 2 months to do it. So if we get to January and nothing has happened and they're still saying Biden is the winner, then I guess we'll know we've been bamboozled on this one. And similarly, if Trump does take office and Biden doesn't get in, which I think is going to happen, and we get to February, March next year, and the virus is still around and people are still wearing masks and businesses are shut down and Bill Gates is still running around and Hillary Clinton's still running around, then I guess we can conclude that we've been had by that point as well, because I would have expected to have seen some major change by then. You know, something's going on with the royal family, though, in England, I can tell you that. They seem to have disappeared.
Yeah, she's not going to be coming back to Buckingham Palace at all, is she?
No, it'll be interesting to see what happens at the time of her annual Christmas message, where they normally wheel her out. It's been a very strange year with the Queen. So we got messages through the mainstream press early on in the supposed pandemic, sort of March, April time, that you shouldn't expect to see the Queen out on public duty at all this year, because being 94, she's very vulnerable and she's got to self-quarantine. And we were told that she had left Buckingham Palace, and then people were taking photographs of Buckingham Palace showing all the windows boarded up, and it was looking abandoned, and the royal crest and seal had disappeared off the gates of Buckingham Palace, and there appeared to be Gurkhas guarding the building in place of the usual beefeaters. It's all very strange. So we're told that the Queen was holding herself up at Windsor Castle with Prince Philip, if he's really still alive. And there's been a few photos released. So there was a photo of her riding her horse, and we were told this is in the grounds of Windsor Castle, and it was in April. We had a very warm April, very hot spring, and there she is in full winter garments, you know, wrapped up to the nines in coats and scarves and stuff. So that would appear to be an old photo that they've rolled out just to let you think that she's still out and about. Then we had a photo that was released that purported to be on Prince Philip's 99th birthday, and they're standing in front of Windsor Castle. But many experts and people that I've spoken to have said that picture was... Then just the other week, the Queen is supposed to have made a visit with Prince William to Porton Down Medical Military Research Centre. And in the reports in the newspapers, they went to great lengths to explain, the staff weren't wearing masks because they were all social distancing. Because people might otherwise think, well, why are none of the people in the pictures wearing masks? Well, could it be because that footage and those photos is not from this year? Could it have been from some previous time and they've just trotted it out and said, this is 2020? And I was told today that at the Remembrance Sunday service in London, the Queen was there laying wreaths, so she was out and about, except she was wearing a mask. The Queen wearing a mask. Or was it? Could it have been a double or an actor, and the mask is helping to conceal their features? There's been a fake Prince Charles that's been paraded around, without a doubt. First popped up on Sky News in an interview in the spring. And there's getting Prince Charles's comments on how he feels about the lockdown and the pandemic. But it's not Prince Charles. It's an actor. Anyone can see this. You just place a picture of the genuine Prince Charles side by side with this one, and the differences speak for themselves. And they wheeled him out again last week, the same actor. On the Pride of Britain Awards, Prince Charles does an introduction, except it's this same actor. So if they're feeling the need to use actors to convince you that these people are still around, the question does arise, what the hell has happened to the royal family, and why haven't we been told about it?
Good question. I'm just watching the time, and I just want to throw these in quickly. Jim asked a question on the chat room, and I was just about to say to you as well that there's a rumour that Buckingham Palace is up for sale. So that's the other rumour. So, but there's a question from Mark here. I want to get this in. Mark wants to know, I would advise he looks again at the Magna Carta. The nobles signed it on the island for Runnymede for a reason. This may mean that the treaty is only valid on the island. Just giving you a heads up. Check it out legally. Yeah, that's just because obviously a lot of the arguments that are being used in law regarding the masks and stuff, and obviously being sued, I think, has got to do with the Magna Carta as well. Because we have a constitution over here, obviously in Ireland, and it's a very strong constitution. And you guys, I think, are using the Magna Carta as part of your attack on the system. But yeah, look, I think it's all to play for. I think you're right. They've been using actors for years. Even Winston Churchill used a double, during World War II. So it's well known that they actually do that. And Hillary, she uses doubles as well. And then if you really want to get into it, you can actually talk about cloning. I worked when I lived in London, and I worked in London. One of the companies I worked for was, do you remember Dolly the sheep was the first cloned sheep?
Yeah.
Right. Well, I worked for the company that did the PR and marketing for that company, who was involved with the cloning of the sheep. And if they're coming out in public telling us that they're cloning sheep, you can guarantee they've been doing that cloning for years before that.
Well, many people claim that this does go on with famous people, politicians and celebrities and stuff. I've kind of stayed away from the subject area of cloning because it's been a step too far for me up to this point. I've got enough other rabbit holes to dive down, so I've not taken a deep dive down that one yet. So, yeah, I can't really say any more on that.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So I reckon what they're going to do, I mean, again, it's all to play for at the moment with what's happening in America, because that is the playground, and whatever happens there, obviously it's going to happen in Europe. I think if the COVID idea, if COVID starts to kind of dwindle out, to save face, I think the politicians, what they have to do is to start saying, oh yeah, we're happy that the cases are coming down now and everything's fine, and we're going to be, aren't we very nice politicians, bringing things down to level 3 and then level 2 and level 1, and then all of a sudden it will just fade out. I'm hoping that's going to be the case.
Yeah, well, sadly, most people have been so terrorised by the fear-based mind control and propaganda of the mainstream media that it would take somebody like Boris Johnson here in the UK getting up on TV and saying, it's okay, folks, the virus is going away and we can all get back to our normal lives. So from now on, no more masks and open up your business. And it would have to come from somebody like him for people to believe it. I'm hoping that this common law case, the private criminal prosecutions against MPs, sees them all getting arrested and tried for treason and fraud and genocide, in which case he won't get a chance to go up there and announce that message, and it's going to have to come from somewhere else. And if this really does happen, if these cases are successful and these MPs go down, the mainstream media is going to be forced to report it, to address what's happened to them, because people just wonder why these people aren't being seen anymore. And it's going to rock people's worlds. It's just going to blow their minds. Those that have been buying the official narrative that there's this deadly virus out there and the government's had to undertake all these measures. Reluctantly, they didn't want to do it, but they've just had to act responsibly. And for them to get this alternative take on things, that this was done to us deliberately, it does amount to fraud, it does amount to treason, it does amount to genocide, it does amount to crimes against humanity. They knew many people were going to die in the care homes, so-called, people committing suicide. They knew it was going to wreak havoc on people's mental health. They knew that people weren't going to be able to get surgery for other medical conditions because they're told the hospitals are overrun with COVID patients. All of this was done by design. And if and when the general public ever gets to discover that, they're just never going to be the same again.
Well, I do know, I'm aware that the UK government, and maybe over here in Ireland as well, that they were concerned about the pensions given to people, because people are living longer and they're getting to pension age. And I know in the early days, people used to die off for 40, 50 before they'd actually get to pension age. But because of medical changes and everything else and people eating healthier, they're lasting longer and living longer, and they're eligible for their pensions. And of course, the UK government doesn't have the money to fund the pensions. So isn't it quite convenient that let's kill off the old people in the old folks' homes, so we don't have to pay the pensions? And obviously they want to bring out this universal social income. So let's destroy the businesses and have everybody, getting their money from the nanny state. But you have to have your vaccine first before you can get any money from them.
That's right. It's all part of the plan. And again, those of us that have been researching this stuff for years have seen it coming. But as I said at the start, I don't think we ever imagined they'd drop it all on us at once. But the idea of getting everyone vaccinated and tying us into the social credit system that comes out of the communist model in China, and it's linked to smart cities and the smart grid and 5G technology and all this, we've been hearing about this for years, and it's all part of the same big master plan. And it also fulfills the agenda of major population reduction. When you think about the wish list of the so-called elite ruling class as inscribed on the Georgia Guidestones, where back in 1980, 40 years ago, and actually 40 years to the day before the lockdowns were brought in Britain and many other countries, those stones were put up there in Georgia in the USA. And of course, the most alarming tenet that's carved into the stones is the wish to maintain humanity in perpetual balance with nature, so they say, at 500 million, which is a reduction of round about 7 billion people.
Exactly.
So they seem to be making a head start on that.
And you'd be surprised how many people actually don't know about the George Guidestones. But listen, Mark, we've reached that time. A big thank you for coming on. Great information as usual. Great talking to you. Do you want to give out your information there where people can find you regarding your books and your websites and stuff like that?
Sure. Well, I've been putting out weekend videos pretty much the whole year, just giving my take on where things are at on my YouTube channel. They've proven to be very popular. People tell me that they find value in that. So you can find those on my YouTube channel, which is called Mark Devlin TV. So that's youtube.com/Mark Devlin TV. I've just had a brand new website built for me by a webmaster in the States. He's done a great job of it. That's djmarkdevlin.com. And that's kind of a one-stop shop portal for all my videos and my podcasts and all my information you can find on there. I'm trying to get round to the writing of my third Musical Truth book. So before all this COVID nonsense, I was a researcher into the true nature of the music industry, and I put out 2 books, Musical Truth Volumes 1 and 2. I've got Volume 3 in my mind. It's written already in my head. It's just a case of me getting it down onto the keyboard and then onto paper. And I keep getting distracted with all the other things I need to do and all these bloody videos I have to make. So I've still not had time to start on that. But I do want to make a head start on that very soon with a view to getting it out in early 2022. But in the meantime, the other books are on Amazon, or if people want to contact me direct via my website there, djmarkdevlin.com, I can send out copies to them direct.
Brilliant stuff. All right, Mark, just stay there for a minute. Just go over a musical break and we'll be back after this.
Sure.